Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something that, well, it touches pretty much every decision you make, the psychology of money.
Mm-hmm.
And as we dug into the research, one thing became really clear straight away. Managing money well. It's basically a soft skill. It's not some hard science.
Right.
So our mission here is to pull out those key behavioral insights, the ones that explain why, being successful with money often has surprisingly little to do with how smart you are on paper or your degree.
Or even how good you are at math, really. We're focusing totally on the mental game, the emotions, the stories we tell ourselves about wealth.
Yeah, the stories.
And what's so striking is how finance is just different, totally different from other complex fields.
How so?
Well, think about it. Building a bridge, performing surgery. You absolutely need top-tier expertise, training, serious brain power. That's paramount.
Okay, sure.
But with money, financial outcomes, they aren't just driven by equations or physics. They're guided by how we behave, by fear, hope, patience, human stuff.
And the evidence for that is just, wow, you see it perfectly in these two kind of unbelievable financial lives.
Oh yeah, the contrast is stark.
Okay, first, you've got Ronald Reed. He was a janitor, a gas station attendant in rural Vermont, lived super frugally.
Saved what little he could.
Exactly. Invested it, like, really simply in basic blue chip stocks, and then just waited for decades.
Patiently waited.
And when he passed away in 2014, he was worth over $8 million.
Incredible. Now, put that next to Richard Fusco.
Right. The polar opposite, almost.
Yeah.
Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive, a big-shot investor, praised for his, quote, sound judgment.
He retired in his 40s. Seemed like he completely won the game, right? Ready for philanthropy.
Looked like it, but then because he got impatient, maybe greedy, in the late 2000s, he went completely broke, just wiped out.
Yeah, shortly after seeming to have it all made.
And that huge mansion he had in Greenwich, the one with the dining room hanging over an indoor pool?
Uh-huh. Wild.
Sold. Foreclosure auction. For 75% less than they thought it was worth. So the janitor, just through sheer discipline, ends up way ahead of the Harvard finance guy. It just forces you to ask, if education and experience didn't matter there, what did?
Well, it really boils down to endurance, doesn't it? And impulse control.
Yeah.
Ronald Reed won by just not messing it up. His behavior led compounding to its magic. Fuscone, his ego, his impatience, that actively destroyed his wealth.
Okay, that perfectly sets up our first big theme then. This idea that when it comes to money, no one's crazy.
Right, because we look at other people's money choices.
Yeah.
Maybe buying some crazy meme stock or taking on tons of debt.
And it looks nuts to us. Reckless, maybe irrational.
But the research points out that pretty much every financial choice, however weird it seems from the outside, makes perfect sense to the person doing it.
Why, though?
Because we're all anchored by our own personal financial history. Your beliefs about money, they're largely shaped by just the dumb luck of when and where you happen to be born, not your IQ.
And here's the crazy imbalance.
Oh.
Your own lived experience with money. That's maybe, what, 0.000000001% of everything happening in the world economy.
Tiny fraction.
But it accounts for something like 80% of how you think the whole financial world operates.
Exactly. And it shows how incredibly hard it is to really feel history versus just reading about it. Like, take JFK talking about the Great Depression. He mentioned his family fortune actually grew then. He had more servants, traveled more.
Wow. Didn't realize that.
He basically said he didn't really learn about the Depression until he read about it at Harvard. Meanwhile, millions of other Americans were scarred for life by the fear and the scarcity of it all.
So studying loss is nothing like living through it.
Not even close. Reading about fear doesn't give you the actual feeling of uncertainty.
And that personal history is so powerful. Look at more recent times, like the 2009 recession. The reality was totally different depending on who you were.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at unemployment rates back in November 2009, for young African-American men, 16 to 19, without a high school diploma, it was almost 50%.
Half of them.
Yeah. But, say, for Caucasian women over 45 with a college degree, it was 4%.
So, two people living in the same country, same recession, radically different worlds.
Totally different economic realities. And that's why smart, reasonable people can argue so fiercely about money stuff. Saving, spending, investing, their lived experiences, their anchors are just fundamentally different.
We even see this play out with something as simple as buying a lottery ticket.
Right. The data shows Americans spend more on lottery tickets than on movies, video games, music, sports, and books combined.
That's wild. And it's mostly folks with lower incomes buying them, right?
Typically, yes.
Uh-huh.
And mathematically, it's a terrible investment, obviously. The odds are awful.
Sure.
But think about it from their perspective. If you feel trapped with limited options, buying that ticket isn't really about the expected financial return.
What is it then?
It's buying a dream, a little piece of tangible hope, however small, of getting the kind of life that maybe others take for granted.
Ah, okay. So it's like paying for hope.
Exactly. And in that light, the purchase feels justifiable to them. It feels reasonable even if it's not rational by Wall Street standards.
Okay, so if patience is so crucial, like with Ronald Read, that brings us straight to our next bit. The power of compounding, which sounds simple, but maybe isn't, and the need for survival.
Yeah, we hear compounding all the time, but the sources frame it less as just a strategy and more like a required behavioral skill.
Interesting. How so?
Well, we tend to focus on skill when we talk about legends like Warren Buffett, like he must be the greatest investor ever.
That's the usual take.
But the point made here is that his massive success, it's actually tied less to being the absolute best stock picker year after year. I mean, guys like Jim Simons at Renaissance actually had higher average annual returns.
Really? Higher than Buffett?
Yeah, significantly higher on average. But Buffett's secret weapon wasn't hitting home runs every year. It was his longevity. Compounding was the real engine.
Okay, break that down.
Well, he started investing consistently when he was, 10 years old?
Incredible.
And the vast majority of his net worth, like 99.9% of it, came after his 50th birthday.
Wow, after 50.
Yeah. So his genius wasn't just maximizing returns each year. It was maximizing time in the market, just staying consistently good or great for 80-plus years.
80 years.
It's like the Ice Age analogy they use. You don't need some massive sudden force to get huge results.
Right.
You just need persistence over an incredibly long time. Like summers that are just cool enough to stop the last winter's snow from melting completely. Tiny changes, individual.
But over hundreds or thousands of years.
Exactly. They build up into these enormous continental ice sheets. Compounding needs fuel, and that fuel is time, consistency, and crucially, not being interrupted.
Okay, so if time is the magic ingredient, doesn't that create a weird tension? Like the strategy to get rich seems different from the strategy to stay rich.
How do you mean?
Well, getting rich feels like it needs optimism, taking risks, being aggressive, right? But if you need to survive for 80 years, isn't being paranoid or super cautious just going to lead to stagnation?
Yeah. That's the exact conflict the research highlights. Getting wealthy often involves that optimistic, maybe even aggressive mindset,
Right.
taking calculated risks.
Right. Offense.
But staying wealthy,
Yeah.
that requires almost the opposite. It's defense. It's a mix of humility, some fear, frugality, and, a degree of paranoia.
Paranoia isn't usually seen as a good thing in investing.
Well, think about Michael Moritz at Sequoia Capital. Huge success over decades. He basically said their long-term success came from always being afraid of going out of business.
Even after all that success, still afraid.
Constantly. Because longevity is the ultimate prize, and the absolute prerequisite for longevity is avoiding ruin.
You have to survive.
You have to survive. Assume good opportunities will always come along if you're still in the game to take them. But if you take one big risk that blows you up, that kills your ability to continue.
Then the compounding engine just stops dead.
Exactly. You must avoid ruin at all costs. That's the bedrock.
Which, okay, that need for survival links perfectly to the next idea. This danger of never defining enough. We see this most dramatically with people who are already incredibly wealthy, undeniably rich, yet they risked everything for more.
Yeah, look at Rajat Gupta, former head of McKinsey, sat on major boards, reportedly worth $100 million.
$100 million, you'd think that's enough.
You would think.
Yeah.
But he risked his entire reputation, his freedom, everything he'd built, for more money he absolutely did not need. Ended up in prison for insider trading.
And Bernie Madoff, too, right? I mean, forget the Ponzi scheme for a second. His legitimate market-making business was apparently earning him, what, $25 to $50 million a year?
Yeah, a massively successful legal business on the side. It really makes you wonder, what pushes someone already making, say, $50 million a year, legitimately, past rational greed into total self-destruction?
It seems insane.
It's this inability to get the goalpost to stop moving. That's what they call the hardest financial skill.
It's moving goalposts.
The moral is simple, but apparently incredibly hard to live by. There's no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need.
Simple to say.
Right. But if your ambition, your expectations, keep rising faster than your satisfaction, you always feel like you're falling behind, even if you're objectively rich.
So you feel like you need to take bigger risks just to catch up to your own moving target.
Exactly. More and more risk.
Yeah.
And often, that ambition gets tangled up with wanting social signals,
Yeah.
status, which leads to this thing called the man-in-the-car paradox.
Okay, what's that?
We chase wealth, partly because we think having stuff like a fancy car will make people respect us, admire us, think we're cool.
Sure, that seems logical.
But think about when you see someone driving a really amazing car. Do you think, wow, that driver must be such a cool person?
Uh, Probably not. Mostly I think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I was cool.
Exactly. The admiration, if there is any, is directed at the car, the object, not the person driving it. You use it as a benchmark for your own desires.
Huh. Okay, I see that. So it's a pointless pursuit in a way.
It's a bit of a vicious cycle, trying to buy status that you can't really own through objects. And this is why it's so important to get the difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Okay, what's the distinction there?
Rich is often about high current income, money that's visible, spent on the fancy car, the big house, the designer clothes.
Right, stuff you see.
Wealth, though.
Yeah.
Wealth is hidden. It's the income you don't spend. It's assets quietly growing, providing options, flexibility, control over your time.
So the truly wealthy person might be the one you don't even notice. Driving the old, reliable car, maybe.
Could be. Society pushes us to admire and imitate the rich. But the real goal for long-term security and freedom should probably be to become wealthy.
Which means not spending everything you make to look rich.
Precisely. That urge to spend money, to show off, to soothe your ego. It's a daily battle for a lot of people. And this is where humility becomes surprisingly powerful for your finances.
Humility, how does that connect?
Well, think about savings. Savings is basically just the gap between your ego and your income.
Huh. Never thought of it like that. The gap between ego and income.
Yeah. If you can shrink your ego's need to signal status through spending, you automatically increase your savings rate. You're choosing wealth over the appearance of being rich.
Yeah.
And honestly, most people aren't paying nearly as much attention to your stuff as you think.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift then to our last main insight. This idea of choosing to be reasonable over purely rational.
Right.
We're often taught, especially in finance, to find the mathematically optimal strategy, the one with the highest expected return on paper.
That's the standard approach, yeah. Maximize everything.
If that optimal strategy is so volatile or so complicated or just so psychologically uncomfortable that you can't actually stick with it when things get rough, then it's useless, right?
Absolutely useless. Because the best plan you can't stick to is worse than a good plan you can follow consistently. People don't really want the strategy that looks best in a spreadsheet.
What do they want?
They want the strategy that lets them sleep at night. Being reasonable means you pick a path, maybe save a bit more aggressively than the math says you need, maybe diversify more, maybe invest a bit slower that feels comfortable enough that you can actually stay the course for the long haul.
Because sticking with it is what lets compounding actually happen.
That's the whole game. Sticking with it, even if the plan is technically suboptimal, according to pure math, is what delivers the results over decades. Consistency trumps brilliance here.
And being able to stick with it means accepting the cost of investing, right? Which isn't just about fees.
No, the real cost, the price of admission for getting those long-term market returns is paid in discomfort. It's paid in volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty, and regret. Those feelings are the price.
That's a key reframe. It's not a sign you did something wrong.
Exactly. You have to see that volatility, that fear you feel during a downturn, as an admission fee. Like paying for a ticket to a potentially great show. It's the unavoidable cost for the potential reward.
Okay, a fee you pay willingly for the potential upside.
Right. But if you see that same volatility and fear as a fine, like a penalty for making a mistake.
Then you'll try to avoid it, right? You'll sell low just to make the pain stop.
Precisely. You panic and sell at the worst possible time, locking in losses. Yeah. Viewing it as a fee versus a fine changes everything behaviorally.
That psychological framing is huge.
It really is. And this idea of enduring the tough times, paying that fee, it loops right back to survival through the concept of having a margin of safety. Room for error.
Room for error.
Yeah.
Like not cutting things too close.
Yeah. We're often told that holding cash is inefficient. It's losing to inflation. It's an opportunity cost.
Standard advice, yeah. Keep money working.
But then you look at someone like Bill Gates. When Microsoft was young and vulnerable, he insisted they always have enough cash in the bank to cover a full year of payroll, even if zero revenue came in.
A whole year's payroll in cash. That sounds incredibly inefficient from a purely financial perspective. Huge opportunity cost.
Totally inefficient on paper. But why did he do it?
Survival.
Exactly. That cushion, that redundancy, it makes the short-term forecast irrelevant. It lets you survive the unexpected, a market crash, a product delay, a pandemic, whatever. It means you don't get forced into desperate decisions.
It lets you stick with the long-term plan.
It buys you the runway, emotionally and financially, to endure the surprises and let compounding work its magic over time. Like Benjamin Graham said, the purpose of the margin of safety is basically to make forecasting unnecessary.
Okay, so it all comes together. You need this sort of blend of outlooks.
Yeah, the material calls it paranoid optimism.
Paranoid optimism. Explain that.
You need to be optimistic about the long term. Believe that historically the economy grows, markets trend upwards over decades. That's the optimism.
Okay, the belief things generally get better.
But you need short-term paranoia.
Yeah.
You need that margin of safety, the cash buffer, the avoidance of ruinous risk, so you can actually survive the inevitable bumps, crashes, and scary periods along the way to reach that optimistic long term.
So the paranoia enables the optimism to pay off.
Perfectly put. They aren't contradictory, they work together. The paranoia ensures you live long enough to benefit from the optimism.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive up. When we boil it all down, the most powerful things you can do with money, they really have very little to do with complex spreadsheets or financial engineering.
Not really, no.
It's all behavioral, isn't it? Cultivating patience, like Ronald Reed, practicing humility, realizing you don't know everything.
Definitely. And actively defining what enough means for you, getting that goalpost to stop moving.
And crucially, accepting that feeling scared or uncertain during market swings. That's just the fee you pay. It's not a fine for doing something wrong.
If you internalize that fee versus fine idea, you're way ahead of the game.
Which leads us to maybe one final really important thought to leave people with. Why is it so incredibly vital to ignore what most other people are doing with their money?
Yeah. This is huge. So many financial mistakes, regrets, even bubbles. They happen because people innocently take cues from others.
Like following the crowd.
Exactly. But the problem is, those other people might be playing a completely different game than you are.
What do you mean, different game?
Think about it. A day trader trying to flip a stock before lunchtime has a totally different goal, time horizon, and risk tolerance than someone saving for retirement 30 years away.
Right. Worlds apart.
So when you hear a tip from a friend or see a recommendation from some pundit on TV, they don't know you. They don't know if you're that day trader or that long-term saver.
They're playing their game, not mine.
Precisely. And if you don't know what your game is, what your time horizon and goals are, you risk getting sucked into following advice that's totally irrelevant, maybe even disastrous for you. You end up making short-term moves based on noise from people playing a different sport.
So the challenge then is figure out your own game first.
That's the challenge we want to leave you with. Define your own financial mission statement. Seriously. What do you try to achieve? And what's your time horizon?
Okay.
If you know, really know, that your mission is, say, 30 years of steady, low-cost growth for retirement, then suddenly all the short-term market chatter, the hot tips, the panic, you can safely ignore most of it. It's just noise from other games.
Defining your game is your best defense.
It's arguably the most powerful behavioral protection you can have against making